morning. Today, in our education program, we have a guest teacher who is going to explain an activity that includes technological tools and that she has designed. Hello, Sofía. Good morning. To begin with, my speech will be structured according to the ACAT framework as a reference for our teaching, because as teachers, we have to take into account where are we going to develop the activity, what tools are we going to use, if the activity is done individually or in groups, and finally give suggestions or ideas of what has to be done. To begin with, according to the set design, my activity will be developed in a class of 6th grade of primary education with devices brought from home or provided by the schools, and all the tools are going to be digital, and the main ones are Google Earth, Prezi, and Google Sites. The duration of the activity is 8 sessions approximately, taking into account the timetable of the subjects in the decree, but it's like a global duration because it's a interdisciplinary task, so it depends on the teachers and on the students. Regarding the social design, this is a group activity with 3 members per group. I really believe in social interaction, and I think that collaborating to solve a task increases knowledge. Finally, in terms of epistemic design, which includes all the mental activity, this is a tourist guide of a European country they want to visit, and they are going to plan a trip there according to a budget. First, the whole group is going to do a brainstorming of the European countries they know. Then they are going to enter in Google Earth and investigate, interact, and manipulate the map of Europe and the tool, and select the country they want with their teammates. I'm aware that with this tool, they are not going to create, but this is a way of approaching the map of Europe in a unique way, because in a traditional way, it wouldn't be so dynamic, and also the students can really see the places as if they were there, which wouldn't be possible without these tools. So it's not the same as using a book or a map. In this part, teachers can do a diagnostic assessment, taking into account the countries and the capitals the students know at the beginning of the activity to compare it with the end. Also here in the beginning, it's important to communicate your expectations towards the activity and the students, and to set the learning goals so they can focus their efforts. Talking about goals, with this activity, students will achieve the following goals and standards. They have to do with the areas of social sciences and also language, and they will work on competencies such as technology, mathematics, and they are related with the use of ICTs. The second step is doing a Prezi presentation with information they found. What I am showing is a model of the final product created by me, because it is important to experience what the students would do and to reflect on whether the activity is worth carrying out. Some topics they can include are food, culture, differences between Spain and the country, unemployment, a standard of living, how to improve the country, pollution, and women's situation. They are going to reflect and see that everything is related to society, and that the task deals with things of the real world in which we live, and develop critical thinking about the situation of our country. And by investigating, their minds will be opened, and they will see that there are different realities than the ones they know. The most important thing in this activity is to reflect. This has a certain relationship with the difficulties we had to travel because of COVID. Many people have not been able to travel as much as they would have liked, and thanks to this activity, we can learn a lot of things, not traveling, but from a classroom. In this part, they will work on technological competencies and production of written text. As we have studied in class, the privacy of our students is very important, and we have to look for websites and tools that are useful and safe. So I recommend teachers give them the links where to look the information, like for example Datos Macro, Wikipedia, YouTube videos, and also for example Google Earth, that also provides information of the country, and you can look for information there. Then, as it is an authentic and interdisciplinary task with a budget of 300 euros, they have to organize a trip, look for a flight, restaurants, and famous museums in 3 days. Here, they will decide on the basis of their interest what to do in the country, whether to go to a famous sports stadium, to go to a museum. Real-world tasks are learning activities where they need to think similar to the requirements in the real world, and work on situations of real life, and promote meaningful learning. Moreover, when you work on the basis of a student's interest, intrinsic motivation increases. Then, they make an oral presentation in class where they present the final product after manipulating all the information in front of the class, where they would be reaching the highest level of Bloom pyramid, which is creation. In this part, the students will be taking notes about important facts of their classmates talk in their presentation, so they learn from each other. Finally, it is uploaded on Google Site as a BLE that is seen at the end of the course, and it's like a blog or a portfolio where they upload all the activities they do, where they acquire technological competence, make them develop metacognition, and encourage this authentic task. When they step out of the class and step into their homes, students will still go online and can get on with their task. This eventually will become part of their life, and the learning process will never separate it from the student's point of view. With this resource, it is much easier for teachers to set assignments which allow students to engage in authentic tasks and enhancing the students' learning experience. After analyzing this tool, something remarkable is that it can be done in a collaborative way because it can be shared. It is secure, as we have seen in task 5, and it can be used from a mobile, tablet, computer, and can be used from many browsers. Each one will create their own, and as I think that it's better for them to discover the tool by themselves and taking advantage of the tutorials of YouTube, they will create it by watching one instead of the teacher giving a verbal explanation. We have many tutorials. Okay, but what ethical problems could you, your students or parents, find doing this activity in a classroom? When they research about the country in Europe they want to do the tourist guide, they are going to look for information in a socio-critical dimension. So they know the reality of that country and compare it with Spain. This may not seem very good for some parents because of their ideology or because they don't want their kids to know the bad side of our country and compare it with another country in Europe. But I really believe that it is very positive to reflect and research about these kinds of issues so then they can draw their own conclusions about problems in real life. Reflecting on the world in which we live, for me, is one of the most important things to develop, a reflective and critical thinking. So schools aren't only places for transmission of theoretical and academic knowledge, however, are places connected with reality. Another ethical problem that we can identify in this activity is that perhaps not all the students have the devices to carry out the activity, but teachers can do many things to keep the activity going on. Regarding the tools used, as we already know, teachers have to look at both the strengths and weaknesses of each one in order to offer the best educational experience to students in a way that doesn't harm their privacy and are accessible for everyone, easy to use. Our civic duty is to safeguard our privacy and that of those around us. As for my digital tools, I have analyzed all of them, taking into account the rubric for e-learning tool evaluation of task 5, but modifying it to take into account what mattered most to me. I focused on analyzing the dimension of accessibility to ensure that no additional equipment or money is required, functionality so the tools are easy to use for them, social because it's a group activity, and cognitive presence because remaining cognitive passive is a problem and they need to do things. In addition, I must say that none is perfect, but I'm going to justify everything, and the most outstanding things are, for example, that Skyscanner, which is a website I recommend to students to plan their trip, has no educational value itself, and it's not intended for this kind of activities, but it is like the means for them to create the authentic task. On the other hand, when analyzing the tools, you realize that not many manage to work on high-order thinking skills and metacognition, but others do so, such as Google Sites. As for the social aspect, for me, it was very important because it's a group activity, and I wanted them to be able to collaborate. And in your opinion, what is the added value of using digital tools in this case? Using digital tools make activities more fun, but this is something much more complex, and the use of ICTs that not only provide fun. We have to use technology in classroom because society is becoming digitalized. The schools and the societies are not isolated entities. Everything is connected, and the students not only have to be provided with academic knowledge, but we have to help them to develop as people in a society that is becoming more technological. So the use of ICTs is something beneficial for them to learn from an early age to use them in the future. Besides, when you use digital tools, you pollute less than using physical materials because we waste a lot of paper. In this activity, children will be working on their technological competence. They will discover the information that is available through the links provided by the teachers and create a presentation by manipulating the information. This activity could be also done in a more traditional way, but we have to progress as we cannot use the same methods that we have always been using, and we shouldn't underestimate the children's ability. Moreover, with a book or a map, you can't virtually appear on a street in Italy, for example, so it's not the same as looking at a textbook. And what changes do you need to make to allow your students to do it from home? To do it from home, they will need a device and Wi-Fi connection. This activity has been thought to be done in the class, but if they want to do something from home, they would need that. We have to adjust to the needs and the context of each student, and it's unrealistic to say that each student have a device to work available. So, as it's a group activity, they will work with one device per group. It's completely fine, and also they can use the computer of the class and also the computer room. As an imaginary teacher, if they want to prepare something at home, I will provide them with all the links for looking for part information, and also I will create all the accounts for accessing the tools. But I prefer doing it in class because then they can collaborate easily, develop social skills, and also debate with their classmates. And how are you going to evaluate this activity? Evaluating is complex, so combining different types can maximize the students' learning. Teachers should be more technological and use new ways of teaching, but also they have to take into account other forms of assessment than a multiple choice test or a Kahoot, which in the end is the same thing. There is no point of doing an enriching and modern activity if at the end you are going to do an exam in which students are only going to remember information that they are going to forget. I use pre-assessment, informal assessment too, that is observation of the development of the activity to promote learning. For example, in the case of a group not working well, you need to make professional decisions about that situation. Also, I use performance assessment when observing the students making the final oral presentation, that it's included in the learning activity, that I created a rubric for that. And finally, the final portfolio, Google Sites, to measure the progress with other activities and involves the students in collection and designs of the portfolio, so encourages to be more metacognitive. This activity also includes a self-evaluation and co-evaluation with templates created by me that are in the script. With this, they are going to develop the second highest level of the Bloom taxonomy, which is evaluating, because they are going to evaluate, argue, criticize. So the marks given for other groups or themselves are not going to be taken into account a lot, but I'm going to take into account the feedback and the arguments they give, because the most important thing is to reflect on their effort and the effort of the other classmates. Can you tell us about how this activity is improving the students' PLE building? Through the last part of the activity on their Google Sites, they will improve their personal learning environment, as they are going to be aware of the tools they have used, also where and what they have used them for, and finally they will reflect on their final product after their work, so they can improve their metacognitive skills. The Google Sites, the link is in the script. Now, related with PLE, can you show us the diagram of the 5 critical elements of this course that you would like to include permanently in your PLE? According to Adela Castañeda 2010, page 23, a PLE is the combination of two sources of information, connections, and activities each person uses regularly to learn. It has three main components. The first is access and decode, is the multimedia information, for example, a blog. The second is recreating, doing or reflecting about information, for example, a computer program. And the third is discuss. Includes the discussion and controversy with others, such as with social networks. We need to be aware that a PLE does not only include tools, and in my PLE diagram, I included these three main components, also 5 tools, where, what I use them for, and with which devices I use them. This activity, when doing it as a group, was surprising because we realized that even though that we use the same tools, we are the same age, and we study the same things, we each use them in different ways, and we each have our own PLE. Individual differences of the students are important because even though they are in the same environment or class, they build different understanding. The relationship that we get thanks to the relationship with the devices go beyond. They do not depend only on the device, but also in the context, and the relationship between the technological, physical, and mental world is something complex, and teachers must realize that some people may have a difficult environment of learning and others no. PLE could be related to many things that we have learned, but I see a relation with diversity of students. Each one of us has their own skills, needs, context, and ways of learning, and also relates to pedagogies that we have studied in psychology, such as constructivism. Teachers should reflect on these things because their work is not only transmitting information, but also helping students to start creating and reflecting on their own cognition, metacognition, and also their PLE. I included for my 5 elements Canva, Google Drive, DeepLA, Instagram, and Miro, and the legend of the diagram is above as well as the components of the PLE. Now we want to know what are the 3 main elements of the teaching competence for a digital world that you consider more relevant. These elements are skills that a teacher must have to work in a digitalized world, and they are all quite important, but the 3 that are most relevant to me are: expert in digital educational content is to know which tools use and how to use them according to the student need. It is very important to have a lot of digital tools and applying and understanding ICTs plus pedagogical techniques. This is very related with TPAC, since not only do teachers need to be expert in the content subject to be taught, but they also need to acquire the pedagogical and technological skills so that learning happens always related to the needs of the students. The second is expert in his organizational or personal learning context, and is his or her ability to learn and to use something that we have also studied, that is PLE, that is the capacity to create, manage, enrich, expand, and adapt their own personal learning environment through the use of ICTs. This includes also the attitudes and conditioning that organize our learning actions. Finally, sensitive to the use of technology from the social commitment perspective. A teacher is an educational professional who empowers and socializes the person, but also is sensitive to the social and ethical problems of his or her time. Teachers need to be aware of the tools they use with their students as well as their pros and cons. This element is related with task 5, where we evaluated the different tools and our privacy. Finally, the mark that I deserve is a 9, because after much reflecting, I think that I have tried my best to capture all the things that I have learned from this course in this video. Also, I have put a lot of effort and time, and I have always been very implicated and actively collaborating with my teammates in all the tasks. Finally, I think that I have understood all the key concepts of the subject, and I understood also the importance of using ICTs in education. I think that the most important role is the analyst, because it's very important to make a final reflection to relate content with social dimension and other areas of life. It is also very important as you have to put emotions aside and make professional decisions about the mark your group members deserve, giving them information so they can improve. This is very beneficial because in the future, when we become teachers, we will make a lot of decisions and evaluate the students. So this part of the task is very related to our future. By doing the analyst role, you realize that there's a lot of aspects that you have to take into account when evaluating, and the complexities and responsibilities involved, and you develop a lot of self-criticism and sense of improvement. Finally, the most challenging role I have performed is the start, because at the beginning I didn't feel very confident talking in English in front of people, but now, and thanks to this role, I enjoy it a lot. The start also carries a lot of responsibilities, because you have to present the final product that your whole group has worked on properly.